The world of women's professional basketball was shocked to its core when the news broke. Caitlin Clark, the shooting sensation and face of the WNBA's future, was leaving the league. What followed was a seismic event no one saw coming, an unexpected announcement of bankruptcy from the very organization Clark had just departed. The WNBA, already grappling with its identity and financial health, now faced an existential crisis without its star player. Clark's departure didn't just create ripples, it sent tidal waves across the sports landscape, drowning an already fragile structure in uncertainty and disbelief. How did things spiral so quickly? But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. The rise of Caitlin Clark was the kind of story that sports legends are made of. In just a few years, she had transformed from a promising college player to the undisputed queen of long-range shooting and clutch performances. Her competitive fire wasn't just hot, it scorched the court. Fans adored her not only for her skill, but for the way she brought a certain swagger to the game. She had the audacity to talk trash to opponents, the confidence to drain a three-pointer from practically anywhere in the building, and the kind of electric energy that filled arenas. In an otherwise struggling league, Clark represented hope. She was young, magnetic, and had the talent to bring eyes to the sport. And for a moment, it looked like the WNBA would finally get its much-needed shot in the arm. But things changed in an instant. Clark's departure felt like a scene ripped from a soap opera, the kind where you hear gasps from the audience as the dramatic twist unfolds. It wasn't just that she left, it was how she left, suddenly and with little warning, creating a vacuum the league simply couldn't fill. One moment, she was there, lighting up the stat sheet, and the next, she was gone, leaving fans and the WNBA alike in a state of shock. In hindsight, there were signs, a contract dispute here, a cryptic tweet there, but nothing to suggest such a final and devastating blow. Behind the scenes, the WNBA's financial troubles weren't exactly a secret. For years, the league had struggled to gain a foothold in a crowded sports market dominated by men's leagues, all while trying to balance low attendance figures and lukewarm television ratings. But Caitlin Clark was supposed to be different. She wasn't just a player, she was an investment. Her face adorned billboards, her highlights were all over social media, and whenever she took the court, people watched. She had something that transcended basketball, charisma. You couldn't quite put your finger on it, but when she played, people cared. Clark's departure hit like a wrecking ball. Sponsors, already hesitant in their support, pulled out even faster than expected. The league's top advertisers, who had banked on Clark being the golden goose, withdrew their backing, leaving the WNBA with a massive revenue hole. It's as if the financial oxygen had been sucked out of the building. Without Clark, the league was not only a tougher sell but also one many saw as no longer worth saving. What had been whispered for years in hushed tones, questions about the league's sustainability, now became the shouting chorus of analysts and fans alike. There's a certain irony to the whole thing. Clark, the player who was meant to save the league, ended up being the reason for its downfall. Her absence revealed just how dependent the WNBA had become on one star to drive its success. It wasn't that the league didn't have other great players, it did. There were plenty of athletes capable of putting up highlight reel plays, but none had the gravitational pull of Caitlin Clark. Without her, the WNBA was like a ship adrift, with no clear direction or ability to steer itself back on course. The WNBA's bankruptcy wasn't the result of one thing, but a culmination of several missteps. The league had failed to build a strong enough foundation. Instead of diversifying its appeal, it had placed all its chips on one player. The strategy was simple but flawed. Get a star, build around them, and hope for the best. But when that star walks away, what do you have left? The WNBA had little to fall back on. A dwindling fan base, a fractured financial model, and now, no star to draw in casual viewers. The bankruptcy filing was the final nail in a coffin that had been slowly closing for years. Yet, what makes this situation even more bewildering is Clark herself. Caitlin had always been unpredictable, both on and off the court. She had the kind of personality that could light up a room or leave people scratching their heads. Her decision to leave the WNBA was, in typical Clark fashion, sudden and dramatic, but perhaps it wasn't all that surprising given her history. She had always marched to the beat of her own drum, caring little about the expectations others placed on her. If there was one constant in Clark's career, it was her ability to shock and awe, and this departure was no exception. As Clark packed up her bags and left the league behind, her impact lingered like a shadow over the WNBA. The bankruptcy was a direct result of her absence, but the cracks in the system had been there long before she left. For years, the league had been trying to find its footing in a sports market that didn't seem particularly interested in watching women's basketball, at least not at the level required to sustain a major professional league. While Clark had brought attention, she alone couldn't solve the underlying issues. The implications of this bankruptcy extend far beyond just the collapse of the WNBA. Clark's departure, and the league's subsequent downfall, sent a strong message about the state of women's sports. It became clear that no matter how talented or charismatic a player is, building an entire enterprise on one person's shoulders is a risky gamble. For other leagues and sports organizations, the lesson was stark. Don't make the same mistake. The business of sports is unpredictable, and banking on a single athlete to carry a league is a dangerous bet. The WNBA's missteps serve as a cautionary tale for how not to handle the rise of a generational talent. At the same time, the story of Clark's exit also brings to light the importance of player autonomy in modern sports. Caitlin Clark wasn't going to be boxed in by the expectations of a league or its fans. Her departure, while jarring, was a reminder that athletes hold immense power in today's world. They are brands unto themselves, and when someone of Clark's stature decides to walk away, the effects are felt throughout the entire ecosystem. Her move shattered the myth that players, even in women's sports, must stick around to help their league survive. Clark had other ambitions, and whether those took her to another league or a completely different venture, she made it clear that her career wasn't beholden to any one organization. While the bankruptcy made headlines and captured the attention of the sports world, it's impossible to talk about this without addressing the human side of the story. What must it have been like for the other players, many of whom had dedicated years of their lives to building the WNBA? For them, Clark's departure wasn't just the end of an era. It was the end of their livelihoods. The collapse of the WNBA left hundreds of athletes and staff members in a state of limbo, wondering what would come next. Some had already sensed the writing on the wall, but that didn't make it any easier. For many, the WNBA wasn't just a job. It was a passion, a dream come true. And now, it was gone. In the aftermath of Clark's decision, the sports world collectively held its breath, waiting to see what her next move would be. Would she sign with a European team, join another league, or perhaps venture into something entirely new like entertainment or business? Whatever her future held, one thing was certain: Caitlin Clark wasn't done making headlines. If anything, her decision to leave the WNBA only added to her mystique. She was a player who did things on her own terms, and that's exactly how she left. The WNBA's declaration of bankruptcy in the wake of Clark's departure was a sad ending to a story that could have been so much more. The league had hoped to build its future around a single star, but that star shone too brightly to be contained. As the dust settled, it became clear that the WNBA's failure wasn't just about losing Caitlin Clark. It was about the league's inability to create something sustainable, something that could stand on its own 2 feet regardless of who was playing. Clark was a spark, but the fire never caught on in the way the league had hoped. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.